Number 1. The Backyard. My story is one of those close call stories. In fact, it is so remarkable that even though it happened a long time ago, I'm still in awe of what happened. I should explain. I live by myself, in a house that I inherited from my parents. It's a small house, in an old neighborhood. Many of the other houses in the neighborhood have been bought out by FEMA because of continuous flooding issues. We always have had pretty bad storms, and we always get flooded. Well, on this night, I had gotten off of work. I had seen the clouds in the sky, and I knew that a massive storm was on its way. It hadn't started raining on my way home, but traffic was already a bear. I passed by several shopping centers and watched as shopping carts were blown across the lots. It was summertime and only 5 p.m., but it was getting dark outside. Every moment, it just got darker and darker. The clouds were bearing down upon the earth. About halfway home, I saw the first flash of lightning. It was one of those that lit up the entire sky. Seconds later, an explosive crack of thunder nearly shook the earth. I just kept hoping I would be able to get home before the rain began. I did make it home in time, just barely. Right afterward, the rain began pouring from the sky. I knew immediately that I was going to have my yard flooded. I was used to this, but never happy when it happened. I spent much of the evening worried about it. The storm had been raging for a couple of hours when the electricity went off. That was all I needed, of course. I went into the kitchen, which was at the back of the house. It was also where the fuse box was. I needed to make sure it wasn't just my house that was out. As I was messing with the box, I was also looking out the back window. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder was accompanied by the brightest flash of orange light that I had ever seen in my life. The thunder was loud, and I could tell that the lightning had hit something. In the split second that the lightning struck, I just happened to be looking out the window. The lightning struck the big tree in my backyard. But it also illuminated the outside for a brief moment. And in that brief moment, I saw that somebody was standing outside next to the tree. That person quickly got knocked to the ground. Scared, I went and grabbed my flashlight. Sure enough, there was a guy outside, now lying next to the tree in my backyard. I wasn't really sure what to do, but I called 911, and then ran out into the rain. He was out cold, but still alive. But beyond that, he was carrying a gun on him, and a backpack. He was taken to the hospital. Apparently, that night, the police had gotten several reports in the area of break-ins. This guy was a burglar. In one of the houses he had robbed, he had also shot and killed the owner of the house. This was about 20 minutes before he showed up in my yard. When he was questioned, he told the police that he only robbed people during storms, because the gunshots could be mistaken for thunder. I am very grateful that lightning bolt hit that tree. Number 2. Caught. The weirdest experience I ever had was a time when I was younger and got caught outside in a storm. As if that in itself was not scary enough, I had a rather terrifying encounter while I was out. I was 12 years old at the time. I didn't have many friends. Very often, I spent all of my time outside by myself. I would hang out in the forested areas to the side of town. Often, I'd sit around and read a book under a tree. I was a real winner, huh? I also like storms. Seeing black clouds cover the sky and lightning light up the earth have always been two of my favorite things. Unfortunately, this day, my admiration of them nearly got me into a lot of trouble. I was sitting by a tree reading when I noticed the storm clouds rolling in. I thought that I probably had a lot of time before they caught up with me, but I was wrong. Before I knew it, the wind had picked up considerably, blowing leaves all over the place. There was a sudden darkening, and I realized this storm was moving in faster than I thought it was. I got up and decided I needed to hustle in order to get home. I tried my best to hurry, but it was soon clear to me that there was no way I could make it home in time. In order to not get too wet, I ducked under a bridge and into a short metal tunnel under the bridge. It didn't offer me any protection from the wind, but it kept me drier than I would have been otherwise. As the storm picked up, it only got darker outside. After a while, it was nearly pitch black out in the afternoon. I couldn't sit down, so instead I leaned up against the wall. The lightning struck and lit up the place. For a brief second, I thought I saw a figure in the distance approaching my shelter. My heart sped up a little. After a few moments, there was another bright flash of lightning. This time, I know I saw a figure. And the second time, he was much closer to me. I thought maybe it was someone else, looking for shelter like I had been. But he wasn't moving very quickly, which was evidenced by the third flash of lightning. The fourth flash of lightning, which showed him incredibly close to me, also gave me the best look at the guy. He seemed old and somewhat grizzled. He had a homeless, hobo look about him. I finally was able to see him without the lightning, and I realized that he had begun moving towards me a lot faster than he had before. And when the lightning flashed again, he was nearly upon me, and he was holding both of his hands out as if he wanted to strangle me. I panicked, no longer caring about the rain, so I turned and tried to run out of the other side of the tunnel. I only took 1 or 2 steps, however, when something from behind me grabbed my long hair, stopping me in my tracks. It kept a tight hold on me, dragging me to the ground. I was terrified. I was a 12-year-old boy, so the idea of someone trying to rape me never even entered my mind. Not to say that it couldn't happen, but I doubt the majority of 12-year-old boys go around worrying about it. But the guy did try to get into my pockets. He wasn't trying to rape me or anything. He was just trying to get his hands in my pockets for money, I figure, because he finally found my wallet and pulled it out of my pocket. Even though he had successfully robbed me, he didn't let go. I kept struggling with him, and eventually he got angry at me. He took my head and slammed it hard up against the metal wall of the tunnel. I went out. I woke up some time later, my head ringing. I was soaked. I got up, barely able to stand because I was so dizzy. Looking around, I saw that the storm had not yet passed. Still, I was able to make it out of the tunnel and over to the street. I passed out again, on the side of the street. I had a concussion. At 12 years old, I had a concussion. The guy who robbed me took my small amount of money from my wallet and threw my wallet to the ground. He wasn't hard to find, though. The police picked him up later. I had a little thunderstorm PTSD for a while afterward, though. Number 3. The Ride. I think one of the worst things a person can do is take advantage of the kindness of someone else. Unfortunately, I had this happen to me quite a while ago. I was 19 at the time and a full-time college student. I had been out on spring break, and was now driving back to school. I had made the trip both there and then back alone. It was quite the hike, since I live in the Midwest and I went to Daytona Beach. When I was going through the Smoky Mountains, I saw a pretty nasty thunderstorm on its way. I didn't quite relish the idea of having to drive through the mountains in a storm. However, there wasn't much I could do. I had driven this stretch of road many times before, and the exits were pretty far away from each other. I was sure the storm would hit before I found a hotel. And even if I found a hotel, I was still running late and getting back to school. And when the storm hit, it was ferocious. I mean, it was a struggle for me to even keep my car on the road. The wind was strong. The lightning was bright. The thunder was loud enough to hurt my ears. And worst of all, I heard the sound of hail as it hit the top of my car. I only hoped it wasn't doing too much damage. Although I had very limited visibility as I drove along, I had to drive very slowly as well. That being the case, I was eventually able to make out a figure standing to the side of the road. Upon closer inspection, it was indeed a hitchhiker. I had picked them up occasionally in the past. I figured the best thing to do was to pick him up, because if the weather was tough on my car, it had to be brutal on him. The guy seemed pretty normal, and relatively grateful that I pulled over. I was expecting something to go wrong immediately, like in a scary movie. But he was friendly and chatty. However, after not long, it seemed like something began affecting him. His speech began slurring after a bit, and his focus seemed to be impaired as well. I thought that maybe he was just getting sleepy and relaxed now that he was in the car and out of the rain. But it was really hard to keep his attention. I began to finally feel that picking the guy up was a bad idea. After a while, he said something that didn't make much sense to me, and creeped me out big time.
I feel like I have rats gnawing on my arm.
And with that, I saw him begin rubbing his arm. He was rubbing it very roughly. Though it was hard to see in the dark, there were so many flashes of lightning that I was able to see him pretty clearly every now and then.
It's the thunder. The thunder hurts,
he told me. I tried to not think about it until I saw him begin scratching his arm. As he continued to scratch his arm, I kept looking over at him, while also trying to keep my eyes on the road. He was scratching his arm pretty raw, and after a while he started bleeding. My eyes grew wide, and I was beginning to get really freaked out by this guy. After scratching a significant amount of the surface area of his arm, I heard the guy grunt in frustration. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a switchblade. Fear gripped my heart. Right then, I thought he was going to stab me or something. Instead, he went directly to cutting his arm. He sliced it longwise a few times before I realized I had to get this guy out of my car. I didn't beat around the bush. I just pulled my car over to the side of the road. I told him that he had to get out. At first, he didn't appear to have heard me. He just kept cutting himself. But after I repeated it very loudly, he looked at me. He looked a bit angry at first, but then he just smiled. He pocketed the blade and got out of the car. He then closed the door and walked away. I was relieved and confused. I really expected him to hurt me or something. But he just walked towards the back of the car in the rain and disappeared. I told my friends about it. They figured he was either deranged or he was on PCP or something. I'll end my story with a horror cliche. It was the last time I ever picked up a hitchhiker. He ruined it for everybody else. Hey all, Killer Orange Cat here. I want to update everyone on what has been going on over here. The GoFundMe campaign for my friend Jerry has worked out much better than I could have hoped. We've reached $1,105 of the $1,500 goal. I'm going to have to continue running the campaign past the goal, simply because the costs of insulin were much higher than I had expected. Thank you everyone who has donated or shared the link on social media. We both appreciate that. If you're interested in donating or sharing the link, it is included in the description. He has a temporary place to stay right now, and is getting some insulin. I'm hoping that by August, I'll have his insurance back, and I will have found him a permanent place to live. If any of the donors are listening, and you would like your name mentioned in a shout-out in a future video, please let me know. Many of the donations were private, but I thought I would ask to show my gratitude. Regarding this channel, I've been a bit overwhelmed in recent weeks and haven't had much activity. I've actually got about 30 stories submitted to the channel, so I'm going to spend this week putting them all together. So I hope you all stay tuned and keep listening. And if you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the button below, or wait for the button of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Leave me a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and share it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow Ichigo and myself on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. Just please know, the one requirement I have is that the story is original and has not appeared on any other channel. In the meantime, don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.